Hey guys, Jonathan Fields from Good Life Project. So my guest today is Helene Godin, who's made a pretty incredible change in career over the last couple of years. And we're going to talk to her about that, what it's inspired by, how it's evolved, and what she's doing now. So awesome to be hanging out with you today.
My pleasure.
So right now, we're hanging out in your kitchen, and you have opened an amazing bakery. And we're going to go a lot more into what that is and why you did it and how you chose to do it in a very particular way. But that's not what you've been doing for the vast majority of your professional career. So take me back and talk to me about, the first big career.
Well, my appearance may deceive you. I was a lawyer for 22 years. Mm-hmm. I was extremely focused on being a lawyer. I come from a family of lawyers, and from the time I was in high school, I'm like, I'm going to go to college and be pre-law, and I took every class there was: history and the law, art and the law, English and the law.
Right. So did you have your legal briefcase in like sixth grade?
Pretty close, pretty close. And in fact, then I went straight to law school, and I got married in law school, and my husband said, we're both starting our careers. Why don't we take a break and teach English in Japan for a year, because this is the only opportunity we'll have. And I foolishly said, no, let's go to Montreal for a long weekend so I can plow ahead.
So Japan for a year or Montreal for a long weekend.
And I was really fortunate because I, out of law school, got a job with a firm that specialized actually in commercial banking, something in which I had no interest. But there was one entertainment partner who had a small boutique practice, and for whatever reason, I ended up, my first assignment was for Stanley. And for the next 6.5 years, I did cutting-edge intellectual property research for him. Saving cartoon characters from the public domain, and defending Babar the elephant, and doing Bill Cosby's pilot agreement. Right. And it was absolutely great. And from there I went to NBC, and after that I was at Reader's Digest, and then had the pleasure of running a firm with a wonderful woman. We had a practice called Wolf and Godin. She was Wolf and I was Godin. And then I was a lawyer for Audible, which invented books on tape before
anyone else did.
Yeah. Books on tape without the tape, before there was the iPod, which was really tricky. Yeah. Thank goodness Steve Jobs came along, and worked for them, helped them do the sale to Amazon. And my last job was at Bloomberg. So I really ran the gamut in terms of intellectual property and media.
And this was over a span of
22 years.
22 years. A whole bunch of different places, a whole bunch of... So, before we talk about the transition away, what was it? You stayed in it for 22 years. Did you enjoy it? And if so, what was it about it that you enjoyed?
I was really fortunate, because what happens, law school is sort of a receiver of people who don't know what to do. It's junior year. I'm
raising my hand because I'm a former lawyer.
It's junior year, like, oh my God, even in a good economy, oh my God, do I have to go to work? Right. What am I going to do? And law school, the LSATs are aptitude, not achievement. You want to go to medical school, you have to have gotten through organic chemistry. You want to be a lawyer, you need good grades and good LSAT scores. Right. And as a result, a lot of people end up in the profession who really, and they can be wonderful at, they can be really good lawyers, but it's not feeding their soul. For whatever reason, I was extremely fortunate. I loved the craft of lawyering. And as I said, I worked for great people, I worked for great companies, and I had the ability to, stay an appropriate amount of time, learn a lot, give 110%, and then a new opportunity would show up and I'd have another chance to grow. And what I found is actually that at every place I learned something, and when I was at Bloomberg, which is a fantastic company to work for, I learned I was done.
So along the way, it also sounds like from the very beginning that you had people that took an interest in your growth.
I was very fortunate, particularly it started at Moses and Singer with a gentleman named Stanley Rothenberg, who passed away a couple of years ago. But he was really one of the gentlemen, and it was mostly gentlemen, who defined the area of copyright law in the 50s. It was this group who all happened to go to Harvard Law School within a 3-year span and went on to work in that area. And he taught me so much. He knew everything there was. We were functioning under the Copyright Act of 1976, which he helped draft. So you couldn't ask for more, and he was very generous in giving me opportunities. He never looked at me and said, well, you're right out of law school, I'll give it to someone else. It was, what can you do?
Right.
And I was inspired to give as much as I could.
So through this whole process then, you're doing something, you have people taking an interest, you're learning, you're growing, you're excelling, you're trying different fields, and you're really enjoying it. What happens to make you just like walk in one day and say, I'm done?
You know, that's a really good question, because I did love the craft of lawyering.
Right. I mean, because most of the stories you hear, people are burned out, they hate it, they're just like, they wanted to get out for years. This is a very different story.
Yeah, and it wasn't, you know, it's not like I was at the top ready to be appointed to the Supreme Court. It was, one day I just thought, I've done everything I want to do. And I'm really fortunate in that respect that I have accomplished, you know, I've checked off everything, you know, helping to sell a publicly traded company, vetting crucial news stories,
right.
you know, working for this high-power financial company. I didn't need to do more. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone, including myself. I felt really good that this was a good stopping place before I got burnt out, before I said, I've had enough, I hate this.
Did you have a sense that if you stayed in there longer, you would have moved towards that point?
Yeah, I do. And I think it's sad for people who are stuck, particularly in professions like the law, where you wake up every day saying, oh, do I have to do this again?
Right. And it's fascinating because there's so many. What do you think keeps people stuck in a place I mean, granted, you know, it's prestigious, you've got a great money, but... And
your mother's so proud.
Well, of course.
My daughter, the lawyer.
Right. So when somebody reaches a point where they're just like, they really aren't enjoying what they're doing for a living, but they stay for years and decades, what do you think keeps people in that place?
Fear.
Fear of what?
A fear of trying something new. It's really, having done it, it's really scary because you've defined yourself. I'll give you an analogy. Is 14 years ago I decided to become a vegetarian. And I knew, like, I have a spine of sand, that I would, you know, be eating a burger within 3 days unless I told everyone. Like, guess what? I'm a vegetarian.
Right.
But so you've defined yourself. Like, I defined myself as a vegetarian, and now at this point I don't think I could eat. I know I couldn't eat meat just because I haven't eaten meat. But it's, you know, well, if you've always been a lawyer, how do you not be a lawyer anymore? That's really scary. Yeah. And I think that's scary no matter what your position is. Yeah, I mean, it's funny, when a couple years back I was interviewing somebody for my first book, and he was an orthopedic surgeon. And he was in practice for some 20 years, but on the side the whole time he was building a coffee plantation in Kona, Hawaii. And it took him 20 years to sort of like convince himself that he was ready, because doctors generally don't ever leave medicine. Right, because you're a doctor. Right, I mean, that's who you are. And literally, they got to a place where they had to sell their house in Orange County to afford some really big equipment on the plantation, and he had to decide, because that would have meant leaving behind his practice. The moment he did, thrilled. Yeah. You know, but up until that point, there was always this hesitation, because it's so, I think lawyering is one of those careers also that can so define people. Right, and what's sad is I think it's a very lucrative profession. Right. But people are so unhappy, they spend every penny. Yeah. The doctor was fortunate in that he tucked enough away to fulfill his dream. In fact, I had a friend and colleague who hated his job, and to make himself feel better would go on elaborate vacations and wear very fancy suits, and then he was offered an opportunity for half the money. And he said, you have no money anyway. You know, take something you think you're really going to enjoy. And it was within the profession, right, but it was doing something that he was going to love so much more. Yeah. And it's amazing, because I think you hit on something fascinating, which is that it's almost like when we're doing something that we're really not happy at, we start to self-medicate by buying stuff, buying stuff, and as a proxy for happiness. But you know, that becomes, we build a lifestyle that then requires us to keep paying more money to like afford all this stuff, and we feel like we're locked into it. Right, you're feeding the beast. And as difficult and painful as this recession has been, for some people, because lawyers, again, is the field I know, they were so relieved. Right. Like, you mean I don't have to do it? My firm is folding? Right. And you shouldn't wait for someone's bankruptcy to get out. No, I mean, it was interesting, because in 2009, there was a lot of hysteria. There were millions of people losing jobs, and it was incredibly sad, and there's a huge amount of it. But at the same time, I had so many conversations with people who were telling me, you know what, I've wanted to stop doing what I've been doing for the last 10 or 20 years, but I never thought it would be socially acceptable.
But now that job doesn't exist anymore. So now I actually can do something radically different. So you get to this place where you walk into work one day and you say, okay, I'm done. I've done everything that I want to do. I'm comfortable doing it. You could have gone a lot of different directions from there. Talk to me about like this short window where you're starting to think, okay, I'm done, but what next?
For better or worse, I can be a bit impetuous. And I'm also not good at sitting still.
As we know from the Japan versus...
Exactly. I met a friend Saturday morning. Jenny, I quit my job yesterday. Let's meet for coffee. We meet on Tuesday. I say, oh my God, I'm so bored. She says, Helene, it's not even been 2 full work days. And my mind is very active, and I just...
So you actually went into work and basically said, like, I'm done, and walked out, and that was it?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, and in fact, and I had a fantastic relationship with a wonderful team of colleagues, and they were stunned.
Yeah.
They said, well, we don't understand. Like, you got a great review, you got a great bonus. And I said, I'm sorry, it's not about that anymore.
Right.
And they said, well, is it another firm? Is it another company? Is there something we can do to redefine your job? And they were incredibly accommodating. Yeah. And I said, no, I have to just stop. If I don't stop now, I'll never stop.
Did you know going in that morning this was going down? Like, was this brewing for a couple of days and getting bigger?
Yeah, it was brewing, and I had actually said to myself about 2 months before, like, this is not working for me, I'll give it 2 months.
Right, okay.
And I did, which isn't a very long time given 22 years.
Well, in Helene time, that's actually 2 months.
Eternity.
It's like a couple of years.
And I thought, and they said, so what are you going to do? And I said, I really have no plan. What's funny is that I recall saying, I don't know, I could do anything. I could be a literary agent, or maybe I'll open a vegan bakery. Now, number 1, I'm not a vegan, and number 2, I didn't know how to bake. And so I don't know why those words came out of my mouth. Maybe it was brewing for all that time.
Maybe.
And I ended up opening a bakery, but not a vegan one.
Right.
A quirky one nonetheless, but.
So how do you go then from there? Okay, I'm done. It's a Tuesday, you're hanging out with Jenny, and you've got to start doing something else to Glutenfree bakery.
Well, I just started playing with different things. I actually had a friend who was a literary agent. I said, let me help you. She happened to be running a book auction. I said, I can help you. I'll man the whiteboard for the different offers and things. And I realized, no, that kind of job I'm done with. I mean, being a literary agent is different than being a lawyer, albeit I'd done publishing deals. But it was still a desk.
Yeah.
I thought, I need to do something completely different, a 180. And I found myself going to the supermarket, which, when you're a workaholic lawyer, you don't do that often. And for whatever reason, I needed to not only feed my soul, I needed to feed myself. And started exploring the food business because I love eating, love going on chowhound adventures. And, I think everyone at some point fantasizes about opening a restaurant.
Most likely, yeah.
And I thought, well, I'll explore that fantasy. And I thought, wait, I've eaten in lots of restaurants. I haven't spent a nanosecond at a restaurant.
Right. And it's also known as being one of the toughest industries on the planet to operate in. It's like, hey.
I knew that, so I thought, all right, how can I boil it down?
Right.
And I don't know how I came up with the idea of a bakery. And then I wanted to do something all the years of commuting, which I actually enjoyed. I mean, I read the New York Times when I took the train.
Right. You had your routine.
Yeah, and there was something very comforting about a routine. And I was incredibly well informed, which was nice. Because if I had a job where I was driving, I listened to NPR, and otherwise I read the Times. But anyway, so I wanted to do something very local. I wanted to really get to know my town. I live in this lovely village on the water, 30 minutes from New York City. I wanted to be part of my community. And so... Did
you feel like when you were a lawyer that you were spending so much time that you weren't so much involved in the community?
I was lucky in that work-life balance. Part of the reason I'm fortunate, not only was my work always interesting, while I was a workaholic, and it wasn't like part-time in law is 40 hours a week.
Right.
I was able to find jobs that worked. For example, in the 6 years when I had Wolf and Godin, it was Godin, so I could set my own hours and build my own, pick my own clients and things. So there was that flexibility. But no, I wasn't really part of Hastings. And now I can't walk into, one of the local restaurants without, hey, how was your blueberry muffin? Happy birthday to your daughter.
So part of it was a Jones to sort of reconnect with the community.
It was to reconnect with the community. It was, my sons are teenagers, and I wanted to be around for that last little piece.
Yeah.
And
was there any sort of, I want to create, if I'm going to open a business and it's going to be local, that I also want to create something that like my kids would want to come to? Or was that not really?
To some extent, but they were old enough that I knew that would be fleeting. It had to be something that I was going to enjoy being in. But because it was my community, there was, number one, this huge incentive to make it really special.
Right.
And it was also really scary. Because if I failed in Scarsdale, which is only 15 minutes away, nobody knew me. It didn't matter.
Right.
Here it was an extremely public act. I mean, may he rest in peace. Andy Griffin lives on here in Hastings, or otherwise known as Mayberry.
So I mean, it's amazing. So you decide, okay, I'm once again, you're making a big public declaration. It's like the declaration you made 14 years ago about how you're changing what you eat.
Right.
And saying, but you're doing it to the whole town, and then you're vesting yourself in this big thing, knowing that you have zero background, zero experience, like nothing. So where do you go from there to actually understand how to do this?
So what I did is I came up with this idea, having started going to the supermarket for a change. I'm walking through the aisles just from going to DeChico's Marketplace, seeing like, is there a trend that I can grab onto? Because the restaurant is way too big, and I boil it down to a bakery. And I notice in this period, this very small period, that the gluten-free section is expanding.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, well, there's a niche, there's a need. What if I can do something where I attract local people, but it's such a tiny population that I can get people to travel as well?
So what's interesting is that for you, because when most people think, okay, somebody opened a gluten-free bakery, my guess is the initial assumption is this is somebody who's gluten intolerant.
I get that all the time.
Right, but this was pure business.
It was pure business, but it was also, I love taking care of people.
Got it. So there is another layer.
There's definitely. Number one, it's a fantastic challenge. Like, could I really produce a product that would be, oh, by the way, it's gluten-free?
Yeah, right.
That you would buy my lemon cake just because it's a delicious lemon cake?
Right.
But then, I think about kids or adults who are sort of isolated. Because food is so social. I mean, it's one of the reasons I wanted to get in the food business. It's nurturing, it's communal. But what about the person who, the kid who shows up, no, I have to have a special cupcake.
Right.
So what if I could come up with something that everyone would want to have? And I've gotten customers that way because they've come in and said, oh, I have some friend, she's coming for, so what can I get her? And then they'll come back and they'll buy it too. And it becomes more acceptable so that it's not there's no burden on anyone. It's just, again, people enjoying food and flavors and the experience.
No, that's amazing. So, but still, you have no experience doing this.
Zero.
So where do we go from there?
So first I have to, test all these gluten-free products and see, is there really a market for this? How good are these products? And with a few exceptions, a lot of it is flavorless dust.
I've tried much of it, and I have to agree with that. I spit out a lot of things marked gluten-free in my life.
Right. There's a reason we all that humanity selected wheat thousands of years ago. So I just started experimenting, and it was a summer like this one. I had quit early May, and it was getting really hot, and it didn't matter, and I'm running the oven full blast, and with the same level of intensity that I did for a $350 million sale of a company, I am going to my own virtual cooking school, diving into Google, how often do you go to page 3?
Right.
And I'm on page 37, learning everything I can about egg whites. And it could take me a day and a half to make a batch of muffins because I need to understand, from 400 different recipes. Well, how much vanilla do they really use, and what's the role of salt?
So you're tapping a huge amount, actually, of your legal background.
It's all about
to do this, because this is like research. This is,
and it's tenacity. And I would say that anyone who wants to make a change has to really be prepared for that. It's not easy, and it will show to your customers or whoever your customer or client is. You have to really understand what you're doing and be passionate about it.
Right. So from there, you start to test.
I just start to test, and in fact, I'm testing. I thought, well, how far can I push this? Can I do gluten-free, dairy-free? Can I do gluten-free vegan?
Right.
Because I, for whatever reason, said to my boss, I'm leaving open a vegan bakery. And I will never forget the email I got from a friend because I had testers all over town. And I got an email from a friend, wow, what a difference an egg makes. So how far can I push it and when do I need to scale back?
So you kind of crowdsourced the testing a little bit also.
Totally.
Very forward thinking.
One of my favorite stories is there was a woman in town who said, oh my God, I heard through someone that you're doing gluten-free baking. I have 2 daughters with celiac. I said, no problem. Actually, today is lemon cupcake day. Let me practice and I'll bring them. And it turns out that it's a horrible snowstorm. And like a Saint Bernard, first I drive, and it's, the whole town is 2 square miles, but it wasn't an easy 2 square miles to navigate. And it's very hilly, and I get to, the bottom of her hill and realize the car is not going to make it. And I call her and I say, I'll meet you halfway, and I'm trekking up the snow with the box of cupcakes.
That's devotion.
It was totally commitment to make sure that I got it right. So I spent about 4 months playing with just the flour mix. But at the same time, I developed a spreadsheet to figure out, is this also commercially viable? And I'm, just saying, well, this isn't a true wholesaler, but can the numbers work this way? If I was to,
because you had to learn the entire business side of this also. It's not just testing recipes.
It's
like, how do you make money?
It was first learning how to use my oven. Literally.
After leaving at 7, okay, right. It's like, we have an oven.
Wait, is there really a difference between bake and broil? Maybe that's why the cupcakes are coming out awfully dark very quickly. And the oven salesman said to me, no, think Beyonce. To the left is bake. And
that's awesome.
I owe her a debt of gratitude. But I would not give up. I mean, it was 8 to 10 hours a day, every day, immersing myself in this, understanding every piece, understanding how ingredients work, how baking works, but also on the supply side, you need to understand what's the cost and, how high can you go on the quality of vanilla and what do you sacrifice if you don't go to the very top.
So that's a huge amount of work. And at this point, you're crowdsourcing the recipes, you're behind the scenes doing spreadsheets, working on all the business stuff. This is also the first time, a lot of people now are defaulting to online businesses because the risk is so little, you can rise and fail and there's no big deal. But you're opening physical locations. You have to sign leases. You have to have a build out. What's going on in your mind around this process?
I decided I was just going to go for it. And, there's a tremendous fear of failure because it's my town. But I had to do it 110%. I wasn't gonna make a minimal commitment. And there is tremendous opportunity in online businesses, but it's also I don't think get the same satisfaction. Every day people come in. I mean, just yesterday someone congratulated me because I'd won an award from Westchester Magazine, and someone else gave me a hug because she liked the cupcakes. Like,
you don't get that. I totally get that because I've been operating largely online for the last four years or so. But before that, I had brick and mortar businesses where centers where people came, and I miss it. I really miss it. And there's something that you can't get the hugs and the hellos and like the community, and it's a very different experience.
But you also have to be willing to put yourself out there and work at it. I mean, I used to be terrible at names. I'd be at a cocktail party, and as you were saying, I'm Jonathan, I somehow lost what you said, and I'd be calling you Steve for the rest of the evening. And now I really work at remembering my customer's name and an interesting detail because I want to connect with them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's an amazing process. So you are now, is it about a year and a half into it?
We opened May 7th. We had a soft opening May 6th.
Right.
I missed Passover, even though I do a killer macaroon, because the build out wasn't done. We were supposed to open early April and just quietly test everything, but instead we opened May 6th as a soft opening, and May 7th our congresswoman came to cut the ribbon. Right.
Nervous that day that people would show up?
So nervous. And well, what had happened is with our soft opening, I turned the sign because the food I needed to get my building permit, my CFO, or I can't remember if it's that or the health department, whatever. That final piece of paper, the minute they handed it to me, I walked to the front door and turned the sign to say open, and people showed up. And the most comforting thing, and to this day I adore Lorraine, was she came in and she looked around and she said, I'll have a raspberry muffin. And 20 minutes later, Lorraine came back to get another one. I thought, my first repeat customer.
Sweet, you only had to wait 20 minutes.
Exactly.
Perfect. So I mean, it's really amazing because that is one of the most terrifying moments
It's very scary.
Because it's like you've poured your heart and soul and your money, and that whole community knows, and it's like, okay, boom,
Right.
open.
Is it a Who concert or Little Man Tate?
Yeah, and you're just hoping with every fiber of your being, and just like, they really came. It's
But there's nothing more satisfying than how, and it really, I spent a year. I think I gave notice on May 7th, and I opened on May 7th. Mm-hmm. And I had really spent a year doing everything I could to make it work.
Right.
Because you can't approach something like, you shouldn't approach any project.
Right. So what we know though, like for anybody who opens a business, as much as you get right, you're also going to get a lot wrong.
Of course.
So tell me a little bit about, like the surprises or the learning that has unfolded over the last year for you.
Getting the timing right of things. Christmas was a little scary because you can be a victim of your success.
Right.
But even quirky little things like the exterminator showing up in full uniform my second day. Like, no, you're supposed to come at night.
That's not good for business with the exterminator.
I'm like, Alberto, in the kitchen.
These things happen.
These things happen, and you have to learn to roll it. We were doing a charity event, and we agreed to bring 40 tea cakes, and I had a new baker, and she burned them.
All 40.
All 40. All 40 at once. Mm-hmm. And it was an interesting lesson because we were running it close to the edge in terms of time anyway.
Right.
And then she burns the 40 tea cakes. But the thing that my biggest takeaway from the experience, other than the fact that we had to load the new batch of tea cakes in a convertible with the roof off, hoping they would cool and I could bag them in the parking lot when I got to the event, was that she never took responsibility.
Huh, interesting.
All she needed to do was look me in the eye and say, "I'm really sorry," and it would have been fine.
Was that the same person who stayed with you as sort of
No.
your baker? Wow. Because this is, I imagine as a lawyer, at some points along the way, you were supervising other people.
Yeah.
But this was a very different setting.
It's very different. It's a very different relationship for me because it's much more personal. I mean, we're
Right.
sort of in this together. I'm very fortunate that I have an absolutely fantastic assistant, Marina Sorbis, who really keeps the trains running and keeps everything on task. And, a great team of bakers who, thank God, get up at 4 a.m. to make these products. And we're all
Right.
really dependent on each other and on a very personal, nurturing level.
So, and you just threw out 4 a.m. So maybe some people know, but probably a lot of people don't know that in the bakery business.
4 a.m. is actually late.
Right, because I had friends whose families, and they were there at like 2 or 3 in the
2
morning.
in the morning. 2 in the morning is not unusual.
Right. So it was never your intention to work that shift.
That's not my skill set.
Right.
And I was aware of that. You
Right.
have to figure out, if you're thinking of making a change, what are you good at and what can you delegate and how comfortable you're
Right.
relying on other people for.
And also part of this was about creating a different lifestyle, cultivating a different lifestyle for you. And that would have sort of been the antithesis.
Right, having done the
What you're trying to
workaholic
do,
thing
right.
extremely well.
Right.
I wanted to take a step back and, and it's for my bakers are this is early in their careers,
Mm-hmm.
and they're eager, and it's lovely to watch and to see them develop and even move on. It's all really good.
Yeah.
And for me, in some ways I work less physical hours at the bakery than I ever did sitting at a desk in a law firm.
right.
But my mind is always going,
Yeah,
thinking
I mean,
about.
it's the nature of owning the business.
Yeah.
It's a 24/7 thing. Even if you're not there, there's some part of your brain where it's there
Yeah.
all the time. It's one of the interesting things about that type of business too, where, where sometimes you almost wish that, there was a trade or there was a job where it's just like you do your shift and you're done. But you don't, because what's there is, you do. I mean, I work harder as when I'm in control of my own as I ever did when I was a lawyer.
Right.
But you experience it differently.
Very differently.
And that I think was a huge awakening for me, and it sounds like for you as well.
Yeah, it is totally different because it's very public, and it's also very personal.
Yeah.
If I'm really doing this for me, I'm gonna make sure that that I'm on top of my game all the time.
Right. So you're established now. Business is growing, and are you, when you wake up every morning, if you think back in your lawyer days and you woke up every morning to the end, like the last couple of months, and now, do you smile? I mean, is this?
You have to understand that the reason I stopped being a lawyer is I stopped smiling when I got out of bed. I was truly fortunate in that I looked forward to the projects I was working on. And if I, needless to say, it's not unusual to work on a Saturday and a Sunday.
Right.
You know, we used to say that Saturdays are when lawyers get to wear jeans to the office,
Uh-huh.
back when people wore suits Monday to Friday. But I always looked forward to it, and I was fortunate, you know, I was able to stop when I didn't look forward to it anymore, and now I'm back to getting out of bed with a big smile.
Yeah, which is huge, and it really, I think that's what it's all about. Where are you going now? So it's like you're sort of like you wrapped the first year, you're into the second year, which very often is the year that people say is actually the harder year.
It is harder
than
because
the
now
first
suddenly
year.
you know what you can do,
Right.
and you get a bigger appetite.
Right.
It's an organic process, but it's also, I'm very focused. I want to really grow our wholesale business. And it's lovely. I hooked up with this particular local market as sort of a laboratory, in that it was a single store and a little, you know, it's local. And I'm learning that part of the business about delivering what products work in terms of shelf life and delivery and packaging.
Right.
And it's something so interesting to me because it's so new. But that's taught me that, okay, I can be in one supermarket. Can I be in 6? Can I
Right.
be in Whole Foods? Can I
Right.
be in Whole Foods regionally, nationally?
But then it begs the whole question, because you've clearly got a mindset where you're like, where can I take this? And you work hard enough to take it anywhere you want to take it. And you've got an amazing product. Trust me, I've tried a lot of it. It's good. But I guess then the risk is, does it turn into something that has the same dynamic that made you want to leave your last career?
I'm hoping not. I hope that I continue to grow and learn, and it's always interesting. And because it's so new, I mean, it took me 22 years to get tired of being a lawyer. I got a long way to go before I'm disappointed in this.
Yeah.
So we're exploring being in you know, retail outlets, other retail outlets, and we're also we're in a few restaurants, which is really flattering. I mean, I was standing in the kitchen. It was a surreal moment for me because I'm standing in the kitchen of one of the top chefs in the area, and he's eating my product and saying, "There's no butter," like, and he has a very fine palate. Like, no, there's no butter, and it was so great. I mean, he happened to be an incredibly lovely man.
Right.
But I felt like, yes,
Score.
big score.
That's awesome. So, last question for you, because it just kind of fits in here, so it's the timing. You wake up with a smile. You know, there is so much growth that you can take this in so many potential directions, and you're somebody who clearly loves learning and growing and challenging yourself. When you zoom the lens out and you think to yourself, so the name of this project is Good Life Project, and when you think to yourself, what does it mean to me? What does it mean to you to live a good life? What comes to you?
A single hug in the parking lot gets me a long way. That's a good, like, connecting with just one person and making a difference for them, whether it's, you know, a mother who was able to have a really good birthday cake for her kid for the first time in 7 years, or the widow who comes in and says, you know, this was one of the last places I went with my husband and it felt really good to be here. That beats a legal brief any day.
Yeah, love it, and that's a perfect place to end it. So thank you so much for awesome conversation. I so enjoyed it. And Jonathan Fields, Good Life Project, and Helene Godin. If you happen to be in the area, BTW Bakery, By the Way Bakery, fantastic. Gluten-free or not, just try it. Thank you so much.
Okay.